If you think commercial real estate is dead or too uncertain right now, then this conversation will challenge your thinking. My guest, Ben Reinberg, has spent 3 decades in the commercial real estate game. In this episode, we walk through what he believes really matters: building a resilient, recession-proof portfolio, non-recourse cash flowing assets, and staying conservative when everyone else is over-leveraged. He shares why he thinks wealthy families today are racing into hard assets for the next cycle, and you'll hear what he believes about the business behind the spreadsheets, how mentorship and billionaires shaped his views, and why he is convinced more than ever that human-to-human communication is the ultimate secret weapon in a tech-obsessed world. His conviction that the highest ROI move still comes from investing in your own personal development, and blah, blah, blah. Cut. If you think that commercial real estate is dead or too uncertain right now, then this conversation will challenge that thinking. My guest, Ben Reinberg, has spent 3 decades in the commercial real estate game, and in this episode, we walk through what he believes really matters: building a recession-resilient, non-recourse cash flowing portfolio, staying conservative when everyone else is over-leveraged. He shares why he thinks wealthy families today are racing into hard assets for the next cycle, and you'll hear why he believes that the business behind the spreadsheets and how mentorship and billionaires have shaped his views has convinced him that human-to-human communication is the ultimate secret weapon in today's tech-obsessed world. He also believes and has strong conviction that the highest ROI move anyone can make is investing in their own personal development. So if you're an advisor, an LP, an operator who just wants to understand how one seasoned investor actually thinks about risk, relationships, and building a life that you're proud of, well, then you're in the right place. It's time to go to the atomic level.
It's time to go to the atomic level.
Welcome back to the Atomic Level, the show where we decode the matters of wealth, one insightful conversation at a time, so that you can grow your net worth as well as your net happiness. I'm J Snook. Today, I'm joined by a good friend of mine and colleague, Ben Reinberg from Alliance Consolidated Group of Companies. Ben, it's great to have you on the Atomic Level.
Thank you, Chris. What a privilege to be on your show. Very excited to add a lot of value to your audience. So let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. I know you do a bunch of these every week in different forms, but this one's a little bit more of a human interest piece. So we unpack and we get down to that atomic level, the DNA behind the business, behind the person running the business, and look to draw insights and parallels for investors and their advisors as it relates to today's market dynamics, today's risks, today's opportunities. So you've spent the last 3 decades in the world of commercial real estate. I'm going to get into that because there's a lot of dynamics playing out in that world today, and hard assets are something that people are looking at, as well as cash flows. Cash has always been king. So we want to dive into your perspective on those things. But before we do that, it's always important to kind of understand, who we're listening to, what their perspective is, and kind of how they came up. And so just right out of the gate, what did the industry look like when you got started? And talk to us a little about what part of that world you miss, and just kind of frame up your path to today from kind of how you got started.
It's amazing because when I started my career in Chicago, where I'm from, I'm a Midwestern guy, it was completely different than it is today. Technology didn't take a foothold in our business. It was shoe leather. It was canvassing properties. It was investing locally or regionally. Regionally, I'm talking about maybe the Great Lakes states of, Michigan and Indiana and Ohio and, Missouri and all the, states that you could drive to. That's how it was. We had to drive or take a quick flight. And so we stayed in Chicago, and Chicago is a major metropolitan city. And so we were able to start an industrial office there. Now, at the time, it was a lot of shaking hands. It was doing deals on napkins. It was a real enjoyable business at the time because the human nature side was your word was your bond. There wasn't the internet, and PDFs, and shopping things, and I think integrity has really dropped off since I started in the business, and it's one of my core values in the company, and it's disturbing to me. And so when I look at everything, Chris, and I say, okay, how great was it when I was getting started? It was authentic. It was pure. It was people shaking hands and having breakfast, and Starbucks wasn't prevalent back then. And so you go and you meet at a coffee shop, or you have breakfast or lunch or dinner with investors or brokers, or you meet them at properties. it was real authentic type situations, faxing a proposal or a letter of intent, and then maybe emailing me at that time. And then CoStar came on the scene when I was a young man, and how expensive it was and what a treat it was to have this database of properties which you've never seen before. So I started with plat maps, when in one of our offices, I had a huge wall that was probably 50 feet wide. And we took the plat books and we copied it, and we would put every piece of land, because we were developing too. And we would highlight in database who owned the land. The Archdiocese, the Catholic Church owned a ton of land, as well as other developers. So we look at who owned the land, who owns this, who owns that. It was all done by hand with highlighters, and it was real authentic stuff and a lot of work. We worked long hours. And I remember the telephone bills. We had inner and intra telephone bills of thousands of dollars to pick up the phone and call someone, maybe in the next county, cost us money. Long distance call. So these were all the factors that affected how we did business. Now it's completely different. It's a whole different world. And that. We have people at Alliance, as all over the country working for us. We're doing these Zoom calls, we're doing Microsoft Teams and Google and all these different things. So we've had to adapt. And so my whole career started with this in-person type relationship. And now all of a sudden it's like I'm remote. And so we had to figure out, then we go a step further, and we have a chief people officer in the company, and we got to figure out, how do we develop a community with this remote workforce now? And so we mastered that. So one thing I've learned in my career in business is I've always had to audible, change, be vulnerable, keep working on myself. I do a lot of personal development, and realize that if I'm vulnerable and I'm willing to change, then the people at Alliance and everyone outside Alliance are willing to change with me. And so how I deal with myself internally will reflect what externally will happen at Alliance. So I'm calm, I'm poised, I educate myself, I listen, I tap into experts. Like, I got this incredible chief AI officer that we work with. So I have this emotional intelligence saying, I don't know everything. So one thing I've learned as a founder and a CEO was I had to build a brand, a personal brand and a company brand. But I also had to bring in talented people like our chief AI officer, chief people officer, chief marketing officer, staff, property management, asset management, acquisitions. The list goes on and on. And so what I realized I could educate your audience is leverage is key. Human capital, technology, intelligence. And these are all the things that we've developed that I'm extremely proud of at Alliance. And so it's been a work in progress since we started.
Yeah. So I want to, kind of keep digging in on some of the things you said there. So one of the things you said was, when you got started, the thing that you miss about it, or that you really enjoyed about it, was the shoe leather component, was the tangibility of it. You didn't have anything to compare it to, because again, in the 90s, that's just the way it was. Like, it wasn't like you had options, but that's a piece now looking back that you realize was like the core of it. It was very relationship driven. It was very belly to belly. There was kind of a hustle and grind and a man of your word. It wasn't that you didn't get, screwed over at times by people, or deals didn't go sideways. That still happened, but it was just, there was like this tangibility, arm's length to the business of commercial real estate and deal making that you really enjoyed. That has morphed, and the possibilities of that's creative have opened up ability to own properties in, across the country, which you do now, versus a specific region. But was there a mentor or moment early on that really shaped kind of some of the things you got to in the latter part of that intro, like your ability to audible? Was there a mentor or a moment that happened that taught you a lesson around that?
Well, to get into commercial real estate, I had a billionaire. I was on an audit because I'm a CPA and I was in accounting when I first got out of college, before I got into commercial real estate, who told me and educated me a lot on business, as well as, start buying assets that produce cash flow, be an entrepreneur. And then I've seen others and talked to guys like Sam Zell and other icons in our business, where I would ask questions. How do you deal with this situation? I'm in this situation. What would you deal with? And I would just listen. And so I would leverage myself into extremely talented people, especially being from Chicago. And I also watch and research and learn from people how they're doing it. If it's industrial, how did Prologis do this? How did Centerpoint Properties do this transition, this development? Who are they using? I would tap into a guy named Jim McShane, who was one of the largest construction. I would say, Jim, explain this to me. He was a mentor of mine. And so I would ask questions that would be vulnerable, which is
It's one of your favorite stories that you can share without, without exposing anybody to something, that you may not like. What's one of your favorite stories, like that you picked up the phone and called, or like where you got great advice, but it was completely something you wouldn't have thought of had you not had that mentor, like a deal that was happening, a pressure point, something where, that really showed up for you. Like,
yeah, I had, so I remember I had a mentor of mine at a house in Highland Park, Illinois, where I raised my kids, and we were there to plan our kids' prom, okay, and how we were going to do it, and the parents went, which I thought was interesting. And he pulled me aside and he's like, "So what's going on in business?" Now he was a mentor of mine. He also worked for one of my other mentors too, and I really admired him and valued him. He was about, I don't know, maybe 8 or 10 years older than me. And he said, "No more." I said, "No more." He goes, "No more recourse. No more signing loans with recourse. No, we're not doing that anymore. There's no reason. Take lower leverage, pay lower returns to your investors, and everyone's going to be just fine." And I took that to heart. I think at the time in our portfolio, we were going non-recourse on loans. We might have had a handful left. So I agreed with him what he said. But it resonated with me because I said, "You're right. Not any more time in my career are we going to sign with recourse." And from that point on, we've always gotten non-recourse on loans. And that was a big statement to me, because when I look at it, and I look at 08 and 09, and I look at the amount of people that went bankrupt, and I look at the people that struggle, it was a very poignant conversation before that, because it showed me, it said, why did he say that to me? What was the rationale? And I've been through enough deals to see that when you're refinancing or values change or the environment changes, not only do you need the ability to hold, but you're also negotiating with the financial institution, and having non-recourse creates great leverage for a borrower. So there's little nuances, Chris, that I've learned in my career.
What year was that? Was that in like 05 when that?
Yeah, it was probably early 2000s when that happened.
It's funny. It's so funny because I was dabbling, meaning like was not a business, but I had, a couple of properties, either speculative or like, small cash flow, like simple stuff, just as like a side, investment back in that era. And I remember I just sold a house that I was living in, because I had bought it in like 01, 02 in Oceanside, California. It had done well from an appreciation standpoint. I'd lived there long enough to kind of take the tax-free capital gain for, an individual. So I flipped it, and then I invested in 2 properties, one in downtown San Diego that was like under construction. Sam Zell's business ended up buying it for pennies on the dollar years later out of bankruptcy. But I invested in a condo. So I like wrote a deposit check, to kind of be in the pre-sale of a condo downtown. And then I bought a house on a lease option. I actually did a lease option where I locked it up, and I kind of had a nice buy right on it. And it was a 4-bedroom, and it was closer to the beach in Oceanside. So I kind of did this little arbitrage. And I remember getting married in 05, and late 04, I had met some people that were richer than me, far richer than me, that owned places in like Rancho Santa Fe. And they had at the time what I thought was my dream home, right? Like, in other words, they were living like in the place I'm going, man, when I make it, that's what I'm going to buy. And it was subtle because it was in a conversation similar. I was at some party or something, and I said, "So what's happening in business?" He's like, "I'm selling the house." And I remember thinking like, "What?" "Yeah, I'm going to go rent for a while." And it was this, wealthier person than me, not really a mentor because that wasn't our relationship, but we were friends. And he was a mentor to me. He didn't know that, right? He wasn't acting like it. But I just started seeing in like 04, 05, people with smart money selling assets. Mm-hmm. And I had been in the wholesale and mortgage finance game in 01, 02. I got out of it because I knew something was wrong with it. It just didn't make sense to me. So I didn't spend a lot of time in it, but I was in it 6 months where I kind of saw the wholesale and the financial side and the New Centuries and the IndyMax. And like, I saw this whole run up, and I was just like, this is insane. people are making crazy money, but this doesn't make sense. Like some of these loans are nuts.
Right.
And so I kind of had a little bit of that pattern, but in 04, 05, I saw people selling good assets and moving into cash and then renting. And it broke a paradigm for me because I didn't come from a world where, you rented, you were supposed to own, right? Like that was the end game. And then I remember panicking like in April of 05, I'm selling it all. It's going to crash. I'm selling it all. And I was so glad to finally get rid of the last property in April of 05. I lost some profit, but I still made like a huge return on it in a 12-month period. But I was like more relieved than anything because I was afraid it was all going to fall apart in like 05. So that's why I'm wondering about that timeline.
Well, I mean, for me,
money was moving early.
Yeah, for me, I have no fear because we underwrite properly. We don't over leverage properties. We invest in properties that are sustainable, recession, pandemic resilient, like medical office or other asset classes. And it's about the ability to hold. And so one of the things that people don't adhere to that we do as a company, I understand, is great real estate fundamentals. And we look at vacancy rates, absorption rates. We look at market rents compared to market. We basically do the underwriting for not only our investors, but also our lenders too. So when we do, it's a privilege to do business with us because we lay it on a silver platter. And that's the game changer. That's the difference in what goes on in our environment. And so for me, it's a long game. It's a marathon business. I'm in the prime of my career at the age of 56 years old. I've been in this business for 32 years, had great success, been through a lot of experiences. And so we offer a lot of value in our leadership team as well in when you invest with us. And so at the end of the day, who does it become attractive? RIAs, family offices, institutions, high net worth investors. They want to do business with us because you earn the right for the masses to invest with you. It's different when you're younger, and you talked about getting started, Chris. It's like, I have to prove myself to people. Well, you know what? You have to prove yourself to me that you have the capital and you can invest and you understand commercial real estate, you understand the risks. It's the privilege. And so it's like the roles have flipped. And so for us, I look at it and say, okay, well, why are we bringing you into the Alliance universe? Because we offer rare product. We offer great cash flow and upside and offer great reporting and ease and comfortability and integrity. So it's not for everyone, but if you're going to invest with us, we want a long-term relationship. So we open the door to the public to come in, but we qualify people. We don't want everyone in the door because we want good people that align with our values, transparency, integrity, consistency, and expertise. So as I've evolved in my career, things have changed. Okay. We qualify properties, we qualify investors and lenders, and you have to earn the right to get into our space. And that's a lot different when you're younger and you're getting started and it's shoe leather and everything. You're like, yeah, whatever works to get it done, to get cash flow in the door, we're going to do it. But at the tail end of it, you still have to underwrite the principles and make sure, because at the end of the day, it's all about what have you done for me lately when it comes to investors and lenders and everything else. And lenders jump around from banks to banks and institution to institution. So the nice thing is we understand the game. We understand how it works. We understand how to deal with it. We understand how to manage risk. So it creates a lot of value to the investment community as well as to brokers. I mean, I'm involved in a deal right now with a broker, and I had to bring the attorneys together and kind of slap them and say, you guys are being foolish. You're letting your egos get involved in the business of what we're doing. I'm the one investing the money and time and energy. I don't care who represents me, but you guys got to get your act together, and it's a seller and us buying. And I said, because we're at a crossroads because you two can't get along. I said, so either you guys step out of the deal and we bring in new people, or you guys get along and figure out how to deal with this. And so that's what we do. So it's more than just having real estate experience. You have to understand people. It's such a people's business. And so when we go back to when I started, it was handshakes, relationship. Here's one thing that's really interesting. It's very hard to compete with me as a young man or woman in the business because I learned the business by picking up the phone, by communicating. So I like to communicate. So people are like, hey, I'll send you a text and that's great. Text and email is wonderful. In this business, it's so relationship oriented. I want to hear your voice. I want to hear your tone. I want to build rapport with you. And so that's my secret weapon advantage, is that I'm going to build rapport. I'm going to ask you questions. I'm going to listen. I'm going to find out your pain points. and we're going to have a conversation about it. The difference now is there's no emotion or feeling on a text. I don't know what's in your head. I don't know what your goals are. I can ask you questions, but I don't know really what's going on with you. So I just came off an investor call, and I was able to hear like where their pain points are. They're not getting cash flow from certain sponsors, not getting good tax benefits, don't like the asset classes, don't like the reporting and the communication. I can't do that over a fluid situation over text or email. And that's the game changer in this environment, Chris, is that everyone's so relying on technology. And so if you look at, I say to my kids are like, hey, Dad, why are you calling me? I'm calling you because I need to have a conversation that I could hammer it out in a minute compared to a 10-minute text. And so it's the same thing in business. And so the art of communication has changed in our business, and especially in the business world, but also I believe has hindered the human nature side of it. So think about this. We're on a podcast right now. We're talking, we're connected. I mean, you're not going to do a podcast over text or email or do serious business.
And candidly, you and I were in a room together a couple of weeks ago, and we've been on 1,000 of these for various reasons, not recording a podcast. There's nothing that ever replaces being within 4 feet of each other. There is a vibrational thing. So as much as you and I can have a conversation and we can connect like this in a new way that a text or whatever can't, then there's the you and I that are, sweating on each other or like 5 feet away from each other, feeling something you can't hear.
That's right.
And so I agree with you. I think what's interesting, why I wanted to have you on this around commercial real estate, is there's a question I want to frame in just so you can answer it in your own way as we keep going on this thread. Like, there's a gravity and a feeling around deal making, especially in real estate, that you can get all the way to a certain point with leverage, with inefficiencies being made more efficient, with technology, with better data, with better insights, like all that, very valuable, accelerated the business. At the end of the day, though, like, 2 people are saying yes at some point still, at least for right now. And when those 2 people say yes, getting to that point, whether it's moving attorneys aside or whatever, is the thing that is more predictable when you're able to pick up the phone or get belly to belly. If you look back at 30 years, was there a time that felt more unpredictable than today? And if so, when was it, and how did you navigate it? Or do you think this is the most unpredictable time in your business because of some of these nuances that are impacting the deal making?
Well, I can look back at 08 and 09 and remember that, Lehman Brothers, seeing people walk out on Wall Street with their boxes, and seeing Countrywide Mortgage go down, and AIG, and seeing these big institutions just cratering. I mean, that scared the hell out of me. And we said, okay, we actually bought a deal during that time, and we still own that property. It's great property. And I realized, okay, how do I get deals done in a tough market? How do I survive in a tough market? And it's led me to the strength and the will to deal even with today in a chaotic market. The value of hard assets. I mean, hard assets produce great cash flow and sustains time. And as you know, every wealthy family, institution, and sovereign fund is flocking to hard assets right now. And that tells you everything. And that's how they've been building wealth. And so what I see is the asset class is great when there's chaos going on in the market. Everyone thinks, okay, well, I'll invest in the stock market and technology and all these other things. But we just keep churning along like the tortoise, like slow and steady and making cash flow, great tax benefits. And so, yeah, I can look back at 08 and 09. I could look back when I got in the business, there was a recession. I could look at the different cycles, and it's all different. But what's interesting about the common thread between every environment, every cycle, is good real estate fundamentals, not over leveraging properties, being prudent with your investors' capital, where you spend it, doing the proper underwriting, being conservative. And when you adhere to these core values, it doesn't matter what environment, it doesn't matter what administration's in office, it doesn't matter what interest rates are, you can survive and get through it and make smart decisions. And you pivot, and you constantly pivot and make decisions. Okay, instead of financing in this market, we're going to pay cash and then put financing on it. We're going to put low leverage on this. We'll increase the leverage if it makes sense and not over leverage it. We don't like the credit worthiness of the tenant. We're going to pass. So again, the investors come first in decisions. But at the end of the day, the reason why people invest with us is because of the pedigree of how do you deal with challenges. So for example, when people ask me and they say, all right, Ben, well, you got all these opportunities to invest and they constantly keep coming. Who do you invest with? I invest with the person that could solve challenges because that's the horse I'm riding now. Because not everything's perfect. I don't care what anyone says. Oh, well, this guy's producing this and they're doing this and that. When I can bet on a person or a company that can solve challenges and that has integrity, I know they could ride any storm. That's why people invest with us, because we've dealt with challenges. We've dealt with struggles and challenges and deals that we've had to reposition and make investors a lot of money and all the nuances. And people lose sight of that because they haven't been investing as long as we have or been in the business as long as we have. So at the end of the day, that's what it's about. And so when we start with the original question of, then till now, well, one, it's experience. Two, technology has changed our business. And it's now instantaneous. I mean, we could send, to lenders, we could send out a package to 10 lenders and say, okay, go at it. It used to be different. We used to have in-person meetings. I mean, my first deal, Chris, was a 95,000 square foot industrial building. I was a real young guy at the time. And I'll tell you a story. I walk in, I am buying the asset from two icons in commercial real estate. They were one of the largest home builders in the United States, too. They started two different home building companies that they sold, and they owned a commercial real estate division. So I'm buying this asset, great market of Chicago. And they came in, and the two of them, they're in suits, and we're in suits, we wear suits, and they used to have china and a big conference room table and hot coffee, and they're turning up the temperature and making me sweat, and I got to ask for a credit in order to close the deal. And they're questioning me because I'm young. They're saying, how do you afford to buy a deal like this at your age? And where do you get the capital from? How'd you get the loan? Like interrogating me. They were intimidating. They were 30, 35 years older than me at the time. I was in my 20s. But at the end of the day, I sustained it, and I walked out of that office with a credit. And so, but that was the business at the time. It was face-to-face, gunslinging type discussion where you had to hold your briefcase and walk away in a negotiation if you had to. And maybe they call you back and say, oh, no, we're kidding, come on back. So those were the moments we had. It was all personal. It was all reading the room and human nature and composing yourself.
Is that still pretty much the case in the, specifically, let's say, in the vertical of medical office and veterinarian office, which you kind of were a leader in 20 years ago, but that has kind of been a bread and butter for Alliance in the portfolio with stable returns and that kind of thing? Is that still the case when you're doing a deal now? I know you've got a couple that are in, the window of closing maybe this quarter and, across different pockets, but down in Florida, is there still that piece where at the end of the day, it still comes down to whether you're the one being intimidated or you're the one intimidating in the actors, because now you're the old dog, is that still happening, or is that not happening because an algorithm is just getting you to that point? I feel like it's still
there. I mean, it's still a people-oriented relationship business. We get on the phone with sellers and buyers all the time, attorneys, because there's human nature involved in these decisions. Why are you selling? Okay. What's the financing like? Same with lenders. Explain it to them. I was on the phone with one of my lenders. She's been my lender for over 20 years. And I said, hey, we're buying a deal. I think you should be jumping in. She goes, absolutely. Now, I had to explain to her all the nuances. It's very hard to explain details on a personal level to someone over an email or a text. You can get into it, but it's just not there. It's like, why are we buying this deal? How are we structuring it? You can make it more efficient too when you have a conversation. So I'm a big believer in conversation. I'm a big believer in the human connection. I think it's really important in our business because you're buying multi-million-dollar properties from people that they're selling you. Some people invested their lives in these properties and their heart and soul, and you have to show respect and gratitude towards it. And so there's a human nature and influence that goes on a personal level. And you can't do that over technology. It's always going to be a relationship business. It's why our business is always slow to adapt to technology, because it's going to be a relationship business. It is. It's how the attorneys get along. It's talking to your accountants. It's being resource rich. There's no doubt, and it will never change. And it's why I have an upper leg compared to the younger generation, because they learn how to communicate over technology. I learned how to communicate through humans.
So what's interesting, and I'm interested in your argument around this. I'll take the position of the other side, just so that people can have the duality of the answer, not because I'm making an agreement one way or the other. Every white collar job that we just talked about, from accounting to law, is really having an interesting month, right? In the last 7 to 10 days, we've hit a point where even people that I've known for years that are godfathers of the AI industry, like Ben Gertzel and things like that, have recalibrated now and said, well, you know what, maybe we will be at AGI in the next 2 years. And that's all happened within the last week to 10 days. And, Claude Opus 4.6 and some of the things that people may have read about in the media or even on this channel are launching things that are doing some mind-blowing stuff that we've been talking about for years. But I say that to say there's 2 generations that are in the seat right now of the largest transfer of wealth in the history of humanity. And that is boomers and Gen Xers like you and me.
Yeah.
And we can appreciate, and I think you're a leading example of this, as a guy who's analog, but who really has embraced and put his money where his mouth is, reinvesting in the technology of the way you operate. I still hear you say, though, this is never going to change. And the reality is if I took the other side and I said, what happens when it does? How do you see this business either bogging down or bifurcating? I mean, if you had to put a crystal ball out, because we're all just guessing, what happens when the accountant and the lawyer are not human? Because that's happening now, and it's the worst it'll ever be. So in a year, it'll be better than that by a factor of 10. And a year from that, it might be 100.
Well, so, the challenge is you still need to interact with your tenants. You still need to interact.
Still a human in the building.
There is. You still have accountants and lawyers that's always going to, you're never going to, we heard the same thing about telehealth. When people are like, oh, well, medical office is going to change telehealth. It's not going to change. You still got to go in person and get a procedure. You go get a colonoscopy. There's no AI that's doing that. Right? So at the end of the day, it's always going to be a relationship business. Human beings own commercial real estate and hard assets. And so you need to know who's on the other side of the transaction. And it's a human element. It's just always going to be the case. It's a relationship business. And if you can communicate properly and effectively, you'll thrive in our business. It's, to me, AI and all the technology is a tool to help communication, to help with being efficient, to help with different aspects of the business, to help scale. But at the end of the day, it is a relationship-oriented business I'm in. And if you don't treat it like that, you get sucked up, because I'll tell you, I gave a prime example earlier. I had 2 attorneys that can't get along in a transaction. I had to step in. I had to talk to my attorney. He's been my attorney for 30 years, Chris, 30 years. And I had set him straight and say, hey, what's going on with you? He's like, hey, I calmed down. I'm making comments. Like, we had to have a conversation. What did AI or anything can't do that? That's a real heart-to-heart, brother-to-brother conversation saying, hey, we're trying to get this deal done. Take your ego out of it. Get her ego.
Yeah, I think that's the unpredictability that is actually going to drive. So where I would say right now, I agree with you in the sense of there's aspects of this business that will be forever changed, and we don't know what they are yet. But we can think that they're not going to, but they're gonna. But the other piece that you said that I do agree with is that no matter what, during that transition or during that aftermath, if there's still a human occupying the space, they're going to want to deal with a human in some part of that interaction. Maybe that interaction hasn't been invented yet because it hasn't been needed until then. But we are going to be forced more and more away from defaulting to, let the tech, like, we don't trust tech as it is. So we're not going to move into a more trustworthy position before we move more to like craving a human experience. And the other side is we're being inundated with noise. Like today, there was an announcement, literally, that this is being recorded on February 13th. It'll air a couple days later. But today there was an announcement, the first ever instance of an AI agent spawning another one. There was also an instance of the first time an AI agent got denied by a human on an open source GitHub repository, and then took its own accord and bashed that human all over Reddit and online without any human oversight, meaning threw them under the bus, created a bunch of fear mongering, tried to discredit them, defame the human. So when you have a use case of that in 2026, where an AI agent is going rogue, for lack of a better word, and doing things to throw a human under the bus, and then there's a human element of defending oneself and other people jumping in, we have no idea what it's going to look like. But what we can predict is that more conversations like what you had to do with your 30-year attorney are going to happen simply because people are going to be overwhelmed. And they're not going to be acting normally. They might be overprotecting. They might be getting in the way of a deal because they're so confused as to what the implication is as a fiduciary, that they're almost paralyzed by their analysis. And then it takes you, who's trying to get a deal done, saying, listen, I get it, but at the end of the day, get it done. Yeah. Right. So I think it's a really interesting time where that's going to be not only a skill, but something that is going to be embraced more. It's going to have to.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be a balancing act. I mean, it's a relationship business. Using AI is going to be a tool, and you're going to have, certain boundaries and expectations involved of where you're going to use it and why. And we're going to have to evolve with it. And so, we've been involved in AI for a couple of years. We're a leader in commercial real estate. It's going to be hard to catch us. But at the end of the day is we still have to deal with it and make sure that it fits within the confines of our business, and how our employees and management team and staff can deal with AI and make sure that how we can become more efficient. I'm encouraged that it will help us scale and maybe minimize the amount of human capital we need, which is fine, but you're still going to need human capital to deal with all the different departments and challenges that we have. It's still a relationship type business. So I don't believe that'll ever change.
Yeah. What do you have as we kind of wind it up? Like two questions I want you to finish with. The first one is, what's got you most excited right now as you look out at your universe of operating companies underneath Alliance? What has you most excited? Like, what are you thinking, just get you jazzed to get out of bed every morning? And then we'll finish up with kind of what you would say to your younger self. But let's start there. Like, what's got you excited right now?
I am excited about the blockchain, and I'm trying to figure out how I can tie that into commercial real estate. That excites me. Also, the different technology coming out with AI and how advanced we are with AI, and as you know, and how much how we advance as a company and individually with AI. That excites me. I'm also excited because of how long I've been in the business and how I look at deals and how more efficient I am and how I've improved my communication. I'm excited because I do significant personal development on myself. And for me, every day, it's a work of art. I'm constantly working on myself. So I'm excited because I'm constantly changing and evolving as a human being, and the company is kind of flowing with me in that regard. So that stuff excites me. That's what gets me excited. And then, just getting involved and really building up my personal hobbies I haven't been able to do since my career because I've been so focused on business. So kind of expanding my mind to do other things besides commercial real estate, which is exciting for me too.
That's awesome. So if you were to give yourself at 25 or whenever you got started, a piece of advice before that first big deal, with all the experience that you have today, what would it be?
I get asked this question a lot, and the answer always stays the same. I would work on myself. I would do personal development. I didn't know about this when I was in my 20s or 30s. I had to learn because I would want to know, how do I manage my emotions? How do I stay stable? How do I become the version of myself that I should be? How do I deal with pressure? And so if I can go back and educate anyone when they're getting started in their careers, work on yourself, be that best version of yourself, live in truth, be who you are, don't be afraid of it, don't run from it. You don't have to build a shell of armor or a house of cards to be successful, especially in this business. You just have to be grateful for what you have. And by doing that, it's doing personal development and learning about yourself and being able to manage your emotions. And so if I can go back and someone could educate me what I knew now or recently, I would say that's the best advice I can give myself at 23, 24, 25. And it's the best, whoever's listening out there, it's the best advice I can give is to work on yourself.
I think it's wonderful advice. And I think it's, kind of purpose of these conversations is to bring the humanity back into our awareness, right? I mean, it's great advice whether you're 35, 25, 65, right? Like it never gets old to learn how to better manage our emotions, to learn how to better live with this being that we are trapped in this meat suit that we call our body on this rock we call Earth, right? I think it's wonderful advice. It's a great place to stop. And I appreciate you coming to the Atomic Level. We'll look forward to learning and hearing more about Alliance and all the things you do. We'll put the websites in the show notes for people as always, but where's the best place for people to reach out to you if they want to learn more?
Well, they can go to a couple of things. If you want to invest with us, go to alliancecgc.com. That's alliancecgc.com. You can click on the invest button. We'll have someone reach out to you, and we can show you how to build wealth through commercial real estate on an asset basis if you're an accredited investor. If you want to learn more about me, go to benreinberg.com. You can buy my new book, which is Hard Assets and Hard Money for Hard Times. As you know, it's a bestseller on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. But if you go to the website, you can pick it up. You can buy it in book or individually. Also, if you want to take classes on the Alliance Academy, you go to benreinberg.com if you want to learn, bring the book to life, as well as continue to learn how to build your skills to build wealth through hard assets. And then also, you can watch my new TV show, The Ben Reinberg Show. You can log on there. It's with the USA Today Network. With tons of publications, tons of content on investing in hard assets, commercial real estate, business in general. You can subscribe to our newsletter on the Substack. You can get involved in our universe. It's all free, great content that'll help you grow personally and professionally as a person. And so I make it very personal. And then you can follow me on all different social media platforms, whether it's Instagram or Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, you name it. We're out there. So pretty transparent process. So benreinberg.com. You can go there to invest. You can go to Alliance CGC and really get to know us and become part of our universe.
Awesome. Thanks for being here, buddy. And we'll see you again soon.
All
Thanks
right.
for being in, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Chris.